Well, to learn more about what it's like to live with OSA, we recently had a small group of people with sleep-disordered breathing problems pay a visit to our studio. I'd like to thank all of you for coming and sharing your experiences with OSA and PAP therapy. We'd like to welcome Lanita and Dave Myers, Raul Guevara, Dr. Matthew Abraham, Peggy Jennings, and Dee Stanley. What impact has PAP therapy had on your life?
You know, you have a problem when you're sitting in a car at a red light and the guy behind you is honking because you've fallen asleep at the red light.
I take public transportation, so I'm riding on the train, and I find myself that I was snoring really heavily. I would fall into this deep sleep, dreaming very, very vivid images, and then I would hear in the background this snoring, and I would wake up, and it would be me snoring. So I knew that there was something wrong there.
I'd come home from work, eat dinner, lay on the couch, and be asleep. I would sleep, if you added up in a day, I probably was sleeping or napping, 12, 14 hours a day if you counted all the naps in the evenings plus the, I'd wake up to go to bed, okay? Once I started using the therapy consistently, that all went away.
The impact of my life was a lot of things. I mean, I used to not be able to sleep in the same bed sometimes with my wife. I mean, I'd toss and I'd turn. We'd stay together for a little bit, but then she would get fed up because I was pulling the sheets off and waking her up and still in her sheets while I was there because I thought I was cold. I'd sweat. I'd have to go to the restroom. Numerous things. And also, during the day on the weekends, I mean, I'd fall asleep right after I woke up. I'd go back to bed for about 30 minutes. I'd go eat lunch. I'd take a nap. Before I'd go out at night, I'd take a nap again. And somewhere along the way, you realize something isn't right. And I mean, it just isn't normal.
You try to catch up on the weekend.
Right.
Say if you're not working Saturday becomes a sleep catch-up day. And you end up sleeping 9 or 10 hours instead of 5 or 6 or 7. You feel worse, headache, tired. The more sleep you were trying to get, the more you felt you needed. And then by the end of the day, you were still tired.
And the anger actually built up early on because I was sleepless. He slept 8, 9 hours in my mind, and I was sleep deprived. And, then it became a problem. And I was pretty, I think, forceful in getting him to go forward with finding out what the problem was.
What happened when you were diagnosed?
It's the best thing that could have happened. It's the best thing that could have happened to me. I'm healthier. I feel better when I wake up in the morning. It's great. It's a feeling I haven't had in a long time. And I don't wake up tired. I don't wake up cranky. And, I'm ready to do whatever I need to do for the day.
It changes him and us as a unit, that he has the ability now to actually have extra time to spend with us and doing activities, and he's much more active than he ever was prior to being on his sleep apnea machine.
It makes you a better father because you want to play with your kids. You've heard the stories about leave me alone, I just want to sleep, or go get a toy, I'll play with you later. And when you're not just wanting for sleep all the time, makes you a better father, makes you a better husband, makes you a better employee on the job, and then all of a sudden it's a good cycle that perpetuates itself. And then you realize, I think, that this is what normal life is supposed to be like, and what you'd been missing out all of that time.
I want to thank all of you for your comments. I'm sure that people with OSA are going to find them very, very helpful.
Listening to those interviews, Sherry, gives me an even deeper appreciation for a good night's sleep.
They made me think about the people in my life who snore. Does everyone who snores have sleep apnea?
Not necessarily, but as many as 50% of the people who snore may have sleep apnea, so your friends should be screened for the disorder.
And I will tell them you insist.
Well, tell them that habitual loud snoring is not normal or healthy.
John, what have you found most interesting as you've been working on this story?
As I've been telling friends and business associates about the OSA series, I've been amazed by the number of people who either know they suffer from the signs and symptoms of OSA or know someone who does. Many of these individuals are either unaware of the severe health consequences or choose to believe that the adverse health consequences won't happen to them.
And the evidence of the cardiovascular consequences of sleep apnea is relatively new.
The case has been building over time, but significant results have come to light in the past 5 years. New research efforts are now looking at the relationship between sleep apnea and other disorders, like diabetes.
And I'll look forward to hearing more about that research. John, what will you have for us in the next edition?
We'll take an in-depth look at the diagnostic process and treatment options.
Please join us for the next edition of Inside OSA, and thank you for watching. Hello and welcome to the second edition of Inside OSA. I'm Sherry Smith and this is medical correspondent John Matthews. Obstructive sleep apnea is as prevalent as adult diabetes and asthma, yet the disorder is much less likely to be diagnosed. Inside OSA provides in-depth information about the disorder and how it's diagnosed and treated to help affected individuals enjoy happier, more productive lives. In this edition, we'll get the inside story on how non-invasive instruments are used to evaluate the quality of a person's sleep and breathing. And some individuals with sleep apnea give us their account of how therapy impacted their lives. To begin, let's look at what OSA does to the body. In people with OSA, the tongue and soft tissues in the airway relax during sleep. When the tongue and tissue totally obstruct the airway, it prevents fresh air from reaching the lungs, despite efforts to breathe. The oxygen content in the blood goes down. The brain recognizes that there's a problem and it briefly arouses the body from sleep, just enough to open the airway. It also stimulates the heart to beat faster and the blood vessels to constrict to send blood and oxygen to the vital organs. Regular breathing is restored, but the cycle repeats itself, sometimes up to 100 times a night. It's a dangerous cycle. The individual never receives restful sleep, and the nighttime stress on the cardiovascular system increases the risk for developing cardiovascular disorders over time. Untreated OSA puts people at increased risk for developing high blood pressure, heart disease, heart attack, and stroke. And here to tell us how a sleep physician determines if your fatigue and snoring are symptomatic of a serious sleep disorder is John Matthews. John?
Thank you, Sherry. The process often starts with a visit to the primary care physician to discuss sleep complaints and symptoms. If there is cause for concern, the doctor makes a referral to a sleep specialist for evaluation. Evaluation begins with a diagnostic sleep study known as polysomnogram, or PSG. The PSG helps determine the type and severity of the sleep disorder, as well as evaluate treatment therapies. The standard for how the sleep study is performed varies based on insurance coverage and the severity of the disorder. Sometimes diagnosing the disorder and determining the appropriate therapy are accomplished in one night. In other cases, the patient is studied on 2 separate